The topic for today's video is the relaxed attack, and the way this one is going to work is that I'm going to give you a small theoretical overview for what the relaxed attack is, how it can help you convert small advantages, and why it's better than other conversion methods in this particular instance. And after I've explained what it is and how you can use it in an abstract sense, I'm going to give you a practical working example from a classical league game that I played last week, where I will share with you my thoughts and implementation of the relaxed attack so that hopefully it'll be easier for you guys to apply into your own games as well. The relaxed attack is most useful when the standard procedure for converting advantages doesn't work. Now, the two big ways of converting advantages that you've probably heard of are via a big attack, where you use your extra material advantage to overwhelm your opponent and gun them down and beat your opponent's king to death, as you can see from the example which I have up in front of you. The second conversion method that you might be familiar with is that of trading it down. The idea of this one is that your advantage gets proportionally bigger and bigger as you trade down, and then eventually you'll end up with a situation like the one you can see in front of you, where you are just going to capture the bishop. In this case, you can promote a pawn, make a queen, and it'll be very easy to checkmate the opponent, seeing as they have no pieces left. The problem with these previously mentioned methodologies is that they're not super effective when it comes to converting small advantages. In this pawn up position on the left, for example, for me to launch a big attack from here, I might have to start taking risks. Maybe I'll even have to sacrifice to break through to the opponent's king. And so with sacrificing, I come with the chance of even losing the game, and it can backfire. Additionally, if I start trying to trade down into an advantageous endgame, seeing as I'm up a pawn, the problem here is that it makes my opponent's decisions much easier, and it shifts the pressure from being on them to being on me to prove that there is actually an advantage in the position. And this additional pressure can introduce problems like time trouble and other practical concerns that makes a position harder to win. On the right-hand side, you can see that I have a structural advantage in this position. But once again, in order to actually break through, I might have to sacrifice something, and as always, that can backfire. And taking unnecessary risk in such a good position doesn't seem like the way to go. Another problem is that with structural advantages, and in more specific cases, space advantages, is that trading down will not benefit you in the slightest, and in fact, can actually help your opponent's position and maybe even give them a small advantage, seeing your space advantage turn into something like an overextension. If you end up in a situation where you have less pieces to sort of fill up the empty space, then you can find your pawns end up becoming weak rather than strong. So I've told you the problem with these previous conversion methods, and I now would like to present to you what I call the relaxed attack, which is a method of converting these sort of small advantage positions where you may have an extra pawn or a slightly better structure. There are three main steps to executing the relaxed attack. The first is restricting your opponent's counterplay so that they can't fight back unless it's unsound. The second is by identifying the breaking point in the enemy position. This may include like fighting for a weak square or trying to attack a weak pawn. And the third step sort of links onto the second one, where you start maneuvering your pieces over to attacking the weakness, building the looming threats of the attack, which puts the pressure on your opponent and makes it much harder to defend. Now, if you execute these three steps correctly, your opponent will only be left with one of two options. Neither are good. The first one is that they lash out with an unsound counterattack, and from here, all you have to be able to do is calculate accurately, make sure you've done your due diligence in step one, and if you can do that, then you can neutralize them and you'll gain an even bigger advantage than you had before, and we can go back to the previously mentioned methods and just do something like trading down because your advantage has become so big. Option 2 is that the opponent does nothing, in which case you just keep executing point 3, maneuvering the attack to the breaking point, and eventually crash through with a win regardless. So the two big problems that this style of play solves over the previous conversion methods is that your opponent remains under big pressure, which they wouldn't remain under if you just go through the option of trading down, and you also get to avoid the risks that you'd have to take in a case where you'd start a big attack. So now that I've laid out the theory and the groundworks for this conversion style, I'm going to share with you guys a classical league game that I played last week where I think I incorporated all aspects of the relaxed attack very well, and hopefully I'll be able to share my ideas with you so that you can replicate similar stuff in your own games. So the example that I'm going to show you is how I executed the relaxed attack against a very strong player, so like 2162 FIDE, as you can see my opponent's name. And I was quite happy with this one because it felt like I had pretty comfortable control the entire time. And I'll walk you through the thought process on how I restricted my opponent's counterplay, identified the weakness, attacked the weakness, and then executed a little bit of concrete calculation to finish him off. So he started with knight c3. I'd done a little bit of preparation in this game. The opening is not super important, but he plays some Richter-Verasov attack. I don't think the system is particularly good. I played the move c5, striking back in the center. There was some captures here. The pawn structure gets a little bit damaged for black, but it's actually quite a good position after the move e3 and takes because black can play h5. This is like some weird theory, but the point of h5 is that the queen cannot come out to the h5 square and put some pressure on my f-pawn. And it also just gets the pawn a little bit more advanced so it can start poking on the king side, seeing as I'll have an open g-file to operate on in the future. But this is sort of besides the point. It's just some theoretical nuances. Opponent goes bishop e2. This is one of the old lines. Queen f3 is more common now. And I continue with h4, just pushing the pawn up the board. It was under attack. He plays bishop f3. I play e6, protect it. I continue with development like knight c6. I play bishop d6. This low depth engine doesn't like it, but higher depth it thinks it's okay. Rook e1, he starts to line up some phantom threats, and already what you might realize is that one of the big things that I have to watch out for, whether or not it's possible, is if my opponent can sacrifice a piece on the d5 square. This is the only real point of counterplay I have to watch for, and also a potential for him to be able to go pawn to c4. But I don't even have the small advantage at the moment, so it's not necessarily the time to be worrying about that. So fast forwarding, I drop my knight back, I overprotect this pawn here. I also drop the bishop back, potentially lining up the queen with an attack on this pawn in the future once I kick the knight away. He plays c4 because he has to break through and do something about it. I play bishop d7, counterattacking the knight so he cannot take. He drops the knight back, and in comes queen c7, attacking two pawns at the same time. He opts to protect his king over here. Maybe g3 was a slightly better approach, but he plays h3. And now I play queen takes on c4. So at this point, black has successfully snagged a pawn, and the small advantage conversion process has to begin. So the nice thing about this is that with the c4 pawn gone, there's reduced pressure on d5, which means I now only have to look at one thing and one thing only, which is can he sacrifice one of these pieces on the d5 square to open up the position and try to get to my king, which is still in the center of the board. He also develops the rook into the game, so now he's got two files, which his rooks want to operate on, and my position's still not particularly well coordinated, even though I have my extra pawn. So I drop the queen back to c7, because there's a concrete calculation here. If he captures the pawn on d5, then I can play queen to h2 check, the king moves over, and I can capture this knight on d5, and my queen has gotten out of the attack, and everything is good. So I have to be able to see that short little 1-2 calculation. He plays king f1, getting out of the threat of queen h2, and now legitimately threatening to play knight takes on d5, but I play queen h2 anyway to get it out of knight takes on d5 once again. So this is the early stages of that kind of prophylactic chess, which is very important to when you're going for a nice slow attack. The second thing that I would also be thinking of at this point already is what's going to be my breakthrough square. Now, early on, I identified that the g2 pawn was a nice point of tension that I could easily get to with my rook and start to apply some pressure with. But the rook and the queen alone won't be able to finish off the king because he's got this bishop here nicely protecting him. So I started trying to come up with other ways and other flanks to attack him on. The first idea that I had was maybe saying this diagonal over here could be quite useful if I could find a way to access it. So maybe I want to try and sacrifice my rook for the knight here, seeing if the other knight goes back. If I can deliver this check, the other knight comes back, then I can give this check. That would actually be a checkmate because the knight would be pinned. So these were the kind of thoughts I was starting to have early on in the game. He played knight g1, I played bishop f4 because I wanted to get my rook into the game and start creating some micro kind of phantom threats, saying maybe I'm going to sacrifice for your knight and get my bishop onto this b5 square. Additionally, the bishop just gets a nice little tempo on the rook. The rook has to move up. It's a little bit less coordinated on the c2 square, potentially preventing the queen from whipping up some counterplay on my b7 pawn. So he plays rook c2, I play rook c8. Now creating potential threats to sacrifice for the knight, although I'm not really sure I would, to be honest. But he does play a4 because he wants to stop any future bishop to b5s. He was scared of the phantom threats of taking the knight. After that, I continue with rook g8, which the nice thing about this move is that it stops my opponent completely in his tracks from any ideas of sacrificing. The reason these sacrifices are stopped completely is because the only way that his capture would ever be dangerous is if he does it with the bishop and then somehow gets the knight involved in a checkmating attack on me with this rook and the knight like this. The problem is that now my queen and rook will team up on the g2 pawn, and already he gets kicked out and I can just capture the knight in the center of the board. So he's pretty much permanently stopped from going for this sacrifice idea. He plays queen d3, just trying to move around and improve the position. It's really, really hard for white to find a move at this point. He was grumbling a little bit, and I could tell he wasn't happy with the position because white literally has nothing to do. There's no real plan here. However, black also has to start trying to find a way to break through and make a plan of his own, which is where I came up with the idea that the breakthrough in this position is actually going to involve the knight. Firstly, I played king f8, saying I'm going to get out of this knight, any d5 sacrifice forever. If I'm going to free up my knight, which I noticed I wanted to get my knight to the f4 square, I need to get the king out of the way first so that I can reduce any risk of tactical counterattacks from my opponent. So he plays b3. He was literally just waiting around, trying to make any old move. He didn't have a plan here. I played bishop to b8, dropping the bishop back to the original square, not playing knight g6 first because, well, why would I play knight g6, right? I'm relinquishing control of d5 right away, and even though, yeah, the sacrifice is still not very good, there's no need for me to give him that opportunity. I might as well play the more flexible move first. So I drop the bishop back. He plays knight e2, still just waiting around. I play knight g6, and now knight f4 is incoming. Firstly, I would play queen h1 check, and then knight f4 so that the knight gets blocked out of the way, and then black crashes through into the position. So let's say white continues doing absolutely nothing. I play queen h1, here, knight f4, let's say queen d2, and then, boom, rook takes on g2, and the position collapses. I notice the breakthrough point here involves sacrificing the rook. After bishop takes, queen takes on g2. It is a very nice checkmate. My opponent would have to play something like this, sacrifice the queen, but even this just doesn't work because I can take it, I can take the queen, and he is getting mated. In fact, after this one, I think this is considerably stronger, starting an attack like this and then picking up the queen. So this is the big threat here. My opponent can no longer just do nothing. He has to try and stop my plans, and he does it with queen d2, adding extra support to this square so that after the check, knight g1, knight f4 is slightly less potent. So instead of that, I play bishop f4 first, kicking the queen back, and then I give the check. And the idea behind this one is that I force the issue here. It was at this point of bishop f4 that the concrete calculation comes into play. I've noticed that my opponent's on the ropes, and I have to find a way to break through. So bishop f4 moves the queen out of the way, check, forces the knight back, and then bishop h2 attacks the knight, forces him to play knight to e2. And finally, after the capture first, you don't want to play knight f4, because then there'll be knight takes on f4, and I lose all my advantage, the pieces get traded, and in fact, white's actually doing okay. But I first capture to attract the knight over, then I play knight f4, and finally rook takes on g2 will be completely killer. I have found the weakness in the position, the g2 pawn, it's come crashing down, we're ready, invaded with all the positions, the slow maneuver to the f4 square, which was pretty much unstoppable, and my opponent is dead. He captured on c8, I took with the bishop, and actually he basically resigned here because of the fact that after he would play queen c3, which is the move he wanted to play, I would have rook takes on g2, takes here, here, takes, and checkmate. So quite a nice game with the relaxed attack, showing a more reserved and practical way to perform an attack on your opponent rather than just going all out crazy sacrifices. I kind of build up in the position and didn't really have to take any risks, only making sacrifices when they were very, very basic, straightforward 1-2 move calculations. So hopefully you guys found this useful. I know it's been a while since I was last uploading. I have had a lot of assignments and essays that I've been writing recently, a lot of deadlines, but I will be a little bit more free over the winter break. So for the next month or two and until mid-January, I'll have a little bit more free time. If you did enjoy the video, I have got some more coaching spots once again open. So if you are interested in some one-to-one coaching and you like my style of teaching, then do check out the description, send me an email and all of that. But other than that, thanks for watching this far if you did, and I'll see you all in another video. Oh yeah, one last thing, forgot to mention, this sort of style of the kind of presentation thing at the start followed by an example game was inspired by a YouTuber called Sam Asaka, so I'll leave him as a link in the description as well, and also if you guys could let me know whether or not you did enjoy this style, that would definitely be very helpful. So for the second time, thanks, and I'll see you. Bye.